The thumbnail's wrong.
What?
Thumbnail says week 5 on it.
Oh, it doesn't.
Oh, okay, maybe on my computer.
How's it going, everyone? Hope everyone's doing well. Welcome to our Week 6 preview show. Appreciate you guys, as always, for tuning in. Marsman, he's going to be putting up that poll, as always. We're going to talk about what happened previous week. Not go through the games, but the results of last week. We'll dive into what we did last time, which is go quickly through some of the standings. We are 2 weeks into the regular season, are left for A, AA, and B, and the Hudson Valley Football League. So, again, 2 regular season left for them. C and D goes to week 8 for their regular season. So obviously playoffs are a huge factor with these last couple weeks going on. So we'll take a look at quickly at the standings. Then we'll get into our game picks. So I'm really excited about that. And obviously, as multiple people are coming in, give that thumbs up, hit that sub button if you haven't already. Share the stream to people who might enjoy some of the Section 1 and Hudson Valley Football League content. We love, obviously, it drives us, providing coverage for you guys. I get messages saying, hey, when is the show coming on? It was supposed to be yesterday. It ended up being Thursday, and that's what it's going to kind of be for work reasons. It'll be either, and we'll announce that on our social media accounts. So we'll try to keep everyone up to date with the most up to date news, and you can also get those news on our Patreon. So consider joining our Patreon. You could be a free member, and then those that are paid members get some additional coverage benefits. So with that said, Mars, welcome, man.
Yeah, man, it's good to be here, and obviously we're getting closer to the time of the playoffs, and we're only in 2 weeks left, which is this is where all the playoff standings and brackets are going to start being built, and it's going to get heated because there's going to be a lot of teams vying for those last spots.
Yeah, and teams that are eliminated trying to pull off upsets, which could really affect the playoff runs, and it can go down in kind of your school history on being the team that spoils other teams' playoff opportunities. So, a lot riding on this, and also teams, with young players trying to come up and make a name for themselves. So it really is for everyone. I hate the term that, hey, I didn't make the playoffs, so let me throw in the towel. You're always being evaluated, right? And we'd mentioned the eye in the sky, which is your tape. You're always trying to prove something. If you're a senior, this is your last hurrah. If you're an underclassman, this is your moment now. You'll probably get more playing time, maybe that you didn't earlier in the season, to make a name for yourself. So this is an important moment no matter where you are, what class you are out on that football field. And also, guys, if you have any questions, throw them in the chat. We're happy to answer them as we go along. Just don't be, hey, pick this game. We're going to pick all of them. So don't waste your question that way. But Mars, let's dive into it. And let's start off with what happened last week. So good news, chat. Frank won. So I ended up beating Mars. Where I had 5 losses. Mars had 7. So I am up on the season 2-1. We have 2 pushes. So right now we are winning for my fans out there, for Mars's fans out there. They got to catch up. I'm also winning the overall season standings as well, 73 to 72%. So good news this week, Mars.
Yeah, it's funny because I don't think I've won a single poll yet, and I'm wondering where all those.
You're getting votes though. You are getting votes.
I'm just saying. I wonder where all those memes were when I almost went perfect on the season for on the weekly picks. I mean, I don't know. There was a whole lot of talking going on when it wasn't perfect, but not a lot of memes going on when it was nearly a perfect week.
Yeah. Not a lot. Well, definitely wasn't perfect this past week. But, let's pull up the standings and quickly looking at AA League A. And again, 6 teams come from League A for AA. 2 come from League B. And how it works is the number 1 seed is actually going to play the number 2 seed of B. And the second seed of this League A in the playoffs is going to play the first seed of League B. I hope I said that correctly. And then it has 3 versus 6, 4 versus 5. So that's kind of how Double A works. Here's where you are in the League A standings. Now you see North Rockland and Scarsdale tied up at 4-1 in league play. North Rockland has the tiebreaker, right? Because they beat Scarsdale last week in a huge victory. Followed up by then, I don't know why. Again, there's always a little bit of mistakes that can happen, but you see 3 teams at 3-2 in league play: Mamaroneck, Carmel, and Suffern. This is so interesting, Mars, because Mamaroneck beat Carmel, Carmel beat Suffern, and Suffern beat Mamaroneck. So this is obviously a real interesting last couple of weeks here. And then you have Arlington sitting at 6 with John Jay's Fishkill at 7. Arlington has beaten John Jay's Fishkill, so they have the tiebreaker there. Now, when you look at B, Mars, also 2 of these teams are coming out. Ossining sitting at 4-0, Ketchum at 3-1. They play each other this week, Mars, and Mount Vernon sitting there at number 3. So this is going to get very interesting, followed up by Yonkers Forest and East Ramapo, who need to win out to have a shot. And we'll kind of go there when we get to, and then Yonkers, Brave, and White Plains. So that's on the AA side. If we go to the A side, again, Somers sitting up at 4-0 and Brewster right behind at 3-1. And there's obviously another game going on this week between those 2 teams, big rivalry game, which has huge implications. And then followed up by Yorktown and Mayapack, both 3-2. Now Yorktown beat Mayapack. They have the head-to-head tiebreaker there. Fox Lane is not out of it at 1-3. Followed up by Lakeland, who's going to need I think, they've lost all the tiebreakers. They play Fox Lane this week, which is a big one, but they lost to Mayapack and I believe Yorktown as well, so that's going to be tough for them. Followed up by John Jay Cross River. And then on the other side, you have Ryan Harrison, 4-0. Harrison has a bye. Ryan's in a non-league game this week. And then Clarkstown South and Eastchester. I think this is a bit of a screw-up on this one, but Eastchester has 2 league victories. They should be 3rd, and South should be 4th. Followed up by North and Nyack. That's there. The next thing, and let me see if it pulls up, is the Pioneer system at D, guys. So obviously, if you're unfamiliar with the Pioneer system, and I didn't mention in A, it's 4-4. So that's how that works. But for the Pioneer system, they use a formula to calculate the standings. And it goes on a bunch of different things. You're going to see here like ratio, multiplier, and then your final Pioneer score. But just to show you, and this is from Game Day 1 that Kevin Devaney has created, which I think is a great thing to try to make things simpler for everybody. But it shows you where the formula is. You take your own winning percentage, you add the combined winning percentage of the teams beaten, subtract the losing percentage of the teams lost to, and then multiply by this predetermined multiplier in the chart below. Some of the teams that, based on their preseason rank and their strength of schedule, their multiplier is higher than others. So, you can kind of see that in this chart here with the multiplier. But this is what the standings look like through week 5. And obviously things are going to really change over this last 2 weeks. So victories are so important no matter where you are. But right now, Westlake and Bronxville sitting at 1 and 2, Pro River, Pleasantville, Rhinex sitting at 5, Ardsley at 6, and then you have Briarcliff Hamilton football program at 7, Byram Hills at 8. Top 8 get in, right? So the top 8 get in, and then you have these teams right on the fringe: Sleepy Hollow, Nanuet. Again, I see Pelham all the way down here. They have a high multiplier, but they have suffered from their ratio, right? Because they have a negative number right now. So again, things can really change over these last 2 weeks. So wins are going to be extremely important. And then to wrap it all off, let me go back. In Class D, we know that Haldane and Tucko play each other. So that one's easy. And then the top 4 teams after week 8 in C play each other. So right now, look at this one, Mars. Valhalla, Dobbs Ferry, and Putt Valley, all 3-0. So you're going to see, obviously, someone's got to come out of this. Followed up by Hastings, which would be the 4th team, and then Woodlands. Hastings did beat Woodlands at some point this year. And then the Hudson Valley Football League. So let's show that real quick. Tappan Zee sitting at number 1. Forest, Greeley, and Peekskill sitting both at 3-1. And again, top 4 teams, we have Panis, who has 2 wins. Portchester has 1 win. That's obviously going to even out. They play the same amount of league games, but that's what it looks like right now, these teams vying. I believe Albertus Magnus might have been eliminated. I know Poughkeepsie has. So that's what it looks like. Mars, thoughts? I know that's a lot. I know it's a lot.
When you look at, especially when I go kind of look at the larger classes here, especially with AA, and I feel like what's crazy about this is that, a lot of teams did not expect teams like North Rockland to kind of take that lead. And
well,
I know the Scarsdale game.
Over lead, yes. Coming into the year, North Rockland we knew was talented.
Yeah, they were talented. I just felt like, especially with how close that game was between them and Scarsdale, was pretty shocking. You know what I mean? And we had a feeling. We said it was going to be a close game between both of them. But it was just like, I think that just the current standings in general, I mean, between, obviously the League A, it was like the Gauntlet League, is really tight up top, right? Obviously with Scarsdale and North Rockland, but then even Mamaroneck and Carmel now tied. But
And
Mamaroneck has the win over them and Suffering, right?
Yeah.
But Mamaroneck has the win over Carmel, so that gives them that advantage. But even looking at League B, I mean, you got to applaud teams like Ossining that have been on a win streak, and they've been playing very strong and tough defense. So, I'm just interested to see what happens with Double A, and obviously A is a tight one as well. But it's going to be an interesting look, especially when Yorktown obviously had a major victory against Mayapack, but now they're trying to establish themselves as that second team to get ahead.
And look who is to Brewster currently. So things very interesting in the playoff front. And a lot there's gonna be some games this week that really determine things. So with that said, let's dive into it. Mars, our game picks. And we're gonna start with the Hudson Valley Football League and go all the way up to Double A. And as we're picking the games, guys, if you have any questions, throw it in the chat as a reminder. And let us know while we're picking the games who you think's gonna win. Keep your bias at the door, you local fans. But let's do it, Mars. Let's get into it. First up is the Hudson Valley Football League. And first game up that I want to talk about is this Horace Greeley 4-1 at Albertus Magnus, who is 1-3. I mentioned just previously that Greeley is number 2 in the league and Magnus is 6. Greeley did not have a game last week. Albertus Magnus lost 52-22 at Walter Panis. When I'm looking at this game, again, Greeley coming off the bye. We talked about it in high school. Not that easy coming off a bye because you're in a routine playing a game. You don't really have that. Now, if you're dealing with some banged up injuries, it helps. But it's hard to get that continuity. But I still think really rocking with the number 2 offense, they're averaging 29 points a game. 4 of the last 5 games, Mars, they've scored 30-plus points. It has led the way with their quarterback in Osh and throwing to guys like Blakesley. But this defense, who's also number 3 in the Hudson Valley Football League, with guys like Sala, Caplo, and others making plays for them, last game they allowed only 6 points. I am going to go with Greeley here. It's on the bye. They have to go on the road. Not that easy to do, but Albertus Magnus defensively, they're 6 out of 7 in points allowed. They've allowed 20-plus points in 3 out of the last 4 games. Offensively, they've been pretty solid, but just too many big plays defensively. Greeley has too much firepower. I'm going to go with Greeley.
Yeah, I'm also going to go with Greeley. I mean, when you look at their offense, they've scored at least 30-plus points a game. The only game they didn't was against Tappan Z, and Tappan Z is the best team in the Hudson Valley Football League currently in the standings. So, I mean, Greeley obviously is going to they really want to just continue the momentum they've had all year. I just think Magnus does not really have the defensive capabilities to slow down guys like Osh that have been playing very well. So I'm going to go with Horace Greeley.
Next up, Mars, another Hudson Valley Football League game. Tappan Z 5-1 at Portchester, who's 2-3. Tappan Z, as we talked about, is currently 1st in the league. Portchester is 5th. And when I look at this, Tappan Z won 42-0 versus Poughkeepsie. Portchester did not have a game last week. Tappan Z is on a roll. I mean, they have won 5 straight, Mars. They're 3-0 on the road. And a win here, I believe, clinches the number 1 seed in the Hudson Valley Football League for Tappan Z. So you look at this team, they're number 1 in offense and points scored. They're averaging over 30 points a game. Their running back Tofa has had 3 touchdowns the last 2 weeks, and their quarterback Kavalen, this passing attack, which came in, with high expectations, has really picked things up the last couple of weeks. And guys like Martinez making plays. But this offensive line, to me, is the difference. They're dominating up front. And I'm going to go with Tappan Z. They're just on a roll. This is also the number 1 defense in the Hudson Valley Football League. They've allowed 6 points combined the last 2 weeks. I know Portchester can run the ball very well with Pauletti, but again, you're going up against a team that is hot right now with a chance to clinch the number 1 seed. I'm going Tappan Z.
I'm also going to go Tappan Z. I feel like their defense has been phenomenal. They really have been shutting teams down, and even though Portchester can run the ball, I just think that they're just too fast. I feel like Tappan Z rallies. They are extremely aggressive up front. They cause a lot of turnovers, and just knowing Tappan Z and how the momentum is carrying them, I'm just going to go with Tappan Z here.
Next up, Hudson Valley Football League, we have Walter Panis, who's 2-3, at Peekskill, who's 3-2. Very interesting matchup to me. Panis is currently 4th in the league, and Peekskill is 3rd, Mars. So this is a huge matchup. Again, got to get into the top 4. And last week, Walter Panis won 52-22 versus Albertus Magnus. Peekskill lost 23-0 at Haldane. And listen, this one was an interesting one for me because, Walter Panis offensively, Mars, they're pretty good. I mean, they have scored 2 50-plus point games, but at times they can be very inconsistent. We've seen them at their high points. They've been really good. And then at times they turn the ball over, which has been killer for them, in games like against Lakeland. Now, Jack Doherty had a really strong performance, 2 rushing touchdowns last week. You have Ramos, you have Generosa. They have guys who can make play. Now, defensively, they need to defend the run. But when you look at Peekskill, Mars, offensively, they also turn the ball over a lot. And it really has hurt them. 2 games they've been shut out. 2 games they've scored over 20-plus points. So running the ball with Jacobs is going to be a key part of this and limiting turnovers. But I am going to go with Peekskill because defensively, they are very strong. They're number 2 in the Hudson Valley Football League in points allowed. 3 games, they've allowed 12 or less points. They like to force a lot of negative plays. And if Walter Panis turns the ball over a couple times, look to see Peekskill take advantage of that. This game could be very close for the entirety. But I think Peekskill defensively makes enough plays to win this one. I'm going Peekskill.
Yeah, I'm also going to go Peekskill. I feel like defensively, I agree with you. They have really a lot of aggressiveness and they cause a lot of turnovers. And even though they they have struggles offensively, I feel like defensively they just keep them in games. And I know last week it didn't really get to show, but I feel like whenever they play an opponent in the Hudson Valley Football League, their defense is what always keeps them around. Right?
Yeah.
And I feel like their offense will get a lot more opportunities, and I just feel like they'll be able to score more points, especially at home. I'm going to go Peekskill.
Next up, we have a CB crossover. So this is a non-league game. We have Woodlands, who's 1-5, at Hen Hud, who's 2-4. Woodlands is currently 5th. Again, this doesn't affect their league standings. And Hen Hud is currently 11th in the Pioneer system. So, looking at this game, it was an ugly one for Woodlands last week, really for both teams. Woodlands lost 50-0 at Pud Valley. Hen Hud lost 47-0 at Bronxville. So both these teams trying to get off a losing streak. And then this one, I am going to go with Hen Hud. They're at home. Offensively, listen, they got shut out last week, but for most of the season, they have been very strong. They're still 4th in points out of 15 schools in B. Justin Parkes has been a dominant force all year. And they're up against a Woodlands defense that has really struggled. They've allowed 30-plus points in 4 out of 6 games this year. And I know Hen Hud's defense has not been good. They're last in B in points allowed. But I think their offensive firepower is a little too much for Woodlands at home. I think the offensive line controls things, and Hen Hud wins this game.
Yeah, I'm also gonna go Hen Hud. I feel like in B right now they're 4 out of 15 in points scored, which is actually really good.
Yes.
But their defense has struggled, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like now they're gonna play against a Woodlands team that really does struggle to put up points. So I feel like their defense is gonna be able to at least kind of play to their own momentum. Offensively, they're gonna score a lot of points. I feel like they're playing at home. I'm gonna go with Hen Hud here.
Yeah, and as I continue, I might want to put up the CD schedule so our fans can see it. I apologize, guys. Next up, this is a CD league matchup, and it's Pud Valley 3-2 at Haldane, who is 3-2. This one's an interesting one to me. Pud Valley is currently tied with first with Dobbs Ferry and Valhalla, all about to play each other these last couple weeks. Pud Valley won, and Haldane is in D, so they're going to play Tucko no matter what. But Pud Valley won 50-0 versus Woodlands. Haldane won 23-0 versus Peekskill. And this one was, again, a very interesting one because when I look at Haldane offensively, at times they're very explosive and at times they also struggle. They're very inconsistent. They had 360 yards last week. The quarterback Palace, was effective at 3 passing touchdowns. Thomas made a lot of plays for them. Corliss made some plays for them. And even Gogler rushed for over 100 yards against a tough Peekskill defense. So you can see Haldane at times, they can be very explosive. And at other times, they struggle to, again, convert on 3rd down, stay on the football field. Now you're going up against a Pud Valley team, which is number 3 in points scored out of the 7 schools in C and D, and they can run they've outscored their opponents on their 3-game winning streak, 127-13. So again, to me, this is a team that's coming in hot. I am going to go with Pud Valley defensively. They're number 2 out of 7 in points allowed. They forced 5 turnovers last week. I think they force a couple of Haldane turnovers here. They run the football effectively with guys like Glenn and Tarrant, and then make some big plays passing to Glenn and guys like Constantino. I'm going to go with Pud Valley in this one.
See, this one was really tough for me. I feel like when you look at a team and they're really tight. Right? I feel like usually the home team has that advantage, and Haldane has a lot of struggles. They're obviously defensively they can play with anybody. I mean, in C and D, they force a lot of turnovers. Their offense has been really inconsistent. They make a lot of mistakes, and obviously last week Putt Valley put on a show. Kaden Glenn had won the Player of the Week on I believe on Low HUD's Player of the Week or the game day one. I can't remember, but he won Game of the Player of the Week, and he really
he's been
showed
sensational all season.
Yeah, he's been really good, and I feel like this was a really tough one for me, mainly because I'm just thinking about Haldane, and they kind of need to have like that a big game to kind of get them really showing out. Because I feel like they've had some really good moments. They had a big win against Pixel last week, but I really want to see more from their offense. Right, I'm going to go with Putt Valley, but I also was very in between on this game. I was thinking about Haldane a little bit, but I think Putt Valley has a lot more going for them right now. Haldane needs to figure out their offense, be more consistent, and I feel like if they can, then they definitely could win this game. But I think it's really tight for me.
Next up, in another CD matchup, league matchup, we have Hastings 1-4 at Tucko, who's 2-3. Hastings currently sitting at the 4th spot in C, and Tucko is in D, so they're playing Haldane in the section title game. But when I look at these two teams, again, Hastings lost 47-7 at Valhalla. Tucko lost a pretty competitive game, 21-7 at Dobbs Ferry. Listen, I know Tucko offensively has also been very inconsistent. They're predicated on the run, obviously, but they've been more consistent than Hastings. And defensively, they played tough last week against a pretty strong offense in Dobbs Ferry. So I'm going to go with Tucko. They're at home. Hastings, at times can really struggle stopping anybody. They've allowed 40-plus points in 4 games this year. And I think offensively they have gotten better these last couple weeks. But with this Tucko rush attack and up front, I think they're going to kind of control things. And I think defensively they're going to force some turnovers, and I'm going to go with Tucko to win this one.
Yeah, I'm also going to agree. I feel like Tucko has, I think their defense is a lot more competitive, and their record, I think, they have some games that are really tight that they played against really good teams. I feel like they're going to have more of a breathing room against playing against Hastings because they just have been struggling all year. Defensively, they've been giving up 40-plus points in the last 4 games, in 4 games. And I just feel like they need to figure themselves out on the defensive side. Tucko needs a big win just to get themselves like back in that momentum. So I feel like at home, Tucko is going to win.
All right, that leads to our first game of the week, and it is a CD matchup. And as I pull it up here, it is Dobbs Ferry 4-1 at Valhalla, who's 4-0. A major league matchup here, Mars, between these two teams. Both tied for first in C with Putt Valley. Now, historically, and we'll talk about both teams and then do a little film. Now, unfortunately, Mars, I didn't get the film I wanted on Dobbs Ferry, so I only have film from one team, so I apologize, Dobbs Ferry, but couldn't get the film that I wanted. But let's talk about both these teams. And Dobbs Ferry, historically, Mars, they are 13-4 in this matchup versus Valhalla, but Valhalla won last year 27-26. So this has been a staple, Valhalla versus Dobbs Ferry, for a while. And let's start with the road team in Dobbs Ferry. They won 21-7 versus Tucko last week. They're 2-0 on the road this year. And offensively, they've been really good. They're 2 out of the 7 teams in C and D in points scored. They average over 34 points a game, Mars, and they've scored over 20 points each game this season. Now, quarterback Hartnett, we know he was a known commodity coming into the season. He had 2 rushing touchdowns last week. He is so important to them running the football, play action pass. But there's been other guys who have really stepped up. O'Connor is another guy, 100-plus yards in back-to-back games, Mars. And then kind of the emerging superstar for Dobbs Ferry is Jackson Kearns, the young player. Now, he did get hurt last week, so I don't know his status. Obviously, him not playing is a major difference in this game. But he has had over 150 all-purpose yards the last 2 games. So whether he's playing is going to be a huge factor. Whether he's not, I'm not sure. We don't get injury reports, Mars. But the big question I have is on this offensive line, right? This is a physical offensive line. Can they move these tough, Valhalla defensive front 7 around? That's my key offensively. Can this offensive line move them around? And play action is going to be so huge in this game because Valhalla is going to give you a lot of loaded boxes, daring you to throw the football. And Ken Hartnett, make plays out of that is going to be so important. Now, defensively, they're 4 out of 7 in points allowed. They can force turnovers. You have guys like Smith, Broccoli, Ravage, they're playmakers there. Now, on defense, the key to me is against Valhalla, they have to get them into 3rd and 5+. It is going to be so important because Valhalla has multiple backs that can run the football inside and outside, and we'll get to them. The question is, hey, can we put it into the inexperienced quarterback's hands to try to throw them to victory? That's got to be the key point of this game. And obviously, you're going to see two teams love to run the football. So this game is going to go by pretty quick. So being efficient in your possessions is going to be so important in this one, Mars. Thoughts on Dobbs Ferry?
Yeah, I mean, Dobbs Ferry has always been a consistent program. I mean, they've always dominated up front. Their offensive line has been able to push people around, and they've always had a really good run game, and they really just control the time of possession, and they just slow the game down to whatever way they want to. And I feel like Dobbs Ferry this year has been really impressive to me. But this is a massive matchup between both these squads. When I look at just on the box report and the scouting report, I mean, these two teams are pretty well matched.
They are. And now let's go to Valhalla, Mars. They won 47-7 versus Hastings. They're 2-0 at home. So you have Dobbs Ferry's 2-0 on the road. They've been a strong road team. Valhalla's been dominant at home. They're 2-0. Offensively, this is the number 1 offense out of the C&D schools in points scored. They've scored 28-plus points, Mars, in all games this year. And obviously, it starts with the run game with them. They have, you want to talk about wild stat, chat? They've had over 700 yards rushing total the last 2 games. I mean, they have been absolutely mauling dudes, and it's a mixture of a couple things. Number 1, the offensive line. They're opening up holes, and it's not just it's O-line, it's the tight ends, it's the backs, all blocking. They're executing at a very high level, winning their one-on-one matchups, blocking, and they're moving bodies, and then they have a cast of backs who can make big plays for you. It starts with their young back in Foyset, who is a downhill runner, physical runner, and then the explosive guys out on the edge, and guys like Ratty and Bergie, who can also go out for passes. You have Teeter out of receiving touchdown last week. The question that's going to be McGinty, who had 3 passing touchdowns last week, was really strong. If they get into these tough predicaments where they got to throw the ball a little more than they want to, how is he going to do, right? Against probably a tougher Dobbs Ferry defense than he's faced so far this season. That's going to be a big question to me. Defensively, this is also the number 1 defense. Valhalla is playing at a very, very high level. The most points they've allowed in a game this year, Mars, is 10 points. So stopping the run is going to be huge. Guys like Lynch have been a big playmaker for them, but this defensive front 7, handling this Dobbs Ferry wing T option type of offense, how are they going to handle that is going to be so important. And to me, on the keys, offensively, Mars, I want to see them attack the edge of Dobbs Ferry. I think, again, you're going to see a bunch of loaded boxes. They have some physicality up in the middle. You're going to get a lot of Foyset running downhill. But attacking the edge with some of the speedsters that they have, that to me is going to be a very interesting key in this one. Can they hit some of those big plays getting out on the edge? Defensively, it's the same thing I had for Dobbs Ferry. Get them into 3rd and 5 and plus and keep Hartnett in the pocket. Because, again, on those rollout games, he has the option to run. Force him to throw within the pocket. Thoughts on Valhalla, Mars?
Yeah, their speed has been very impressive. And you can see that in their front 7. You can see that in just their defense in general. And they really have swarmed to the ball every time that they've had the chance to. And I feel like they just have so much team speed that it carries over to the offense, where you get them in open space, they really can break a run into a massive play. So just seeing this battle between a very conservative, slow the game down Dobbs Ferry front, and a very speedy front against Valhalla, it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out.
Yeah. And let's do a little film. And I'm going to talk about that Valhalla rush attack. So let me pull it up, guys. Let me see, make sure everyone is... All right. See it clearly?
Yeah, all good.
All right, good. All right, so yeah, again, apologize about the Dobbs Ferry. The film didn't come out exactly how I wanted, so I don't want to use it and waste everyone's time. But I am going to focus on a little bit of the Valhalla rush attack and talk about some of the things they do. They do very well running inside and running to the outside. They have a cast of backs who can make plays for you, but I really like the way they can execute blocking the football. It's been pretty dominant all year. I mean, this is 1st and 15 here, and this is going to be just a simple play that you see all the time. You have a tight end wing, they have a slot on the backside, and this is just a trap play. Right? You're going to see trap, You see that guard and tackle get up to the second level, and you see this guard pull and kick out that defensive tackle. I mean, they're in a 5-man front right now, and obviously going to get the motion. And so you see a lot in this wing T offense faking a jet. So as you see the play go, first off, look at this one-on-one blocking right here. Everyone's winning. You got a guy sealing here. You got a guy getting up to the second level. Look at him driving that linebacker and a nice kick-out block. Look at the head to the inside. You can see that line. You can't see the offensive player's head. Keeps the head to the inside. That's a big part of this when you're trapping Mars, right? You know, if it's going inside, your head's inside. It's going outside, your head's outside. Well executed. And you get a guy like Foyset getting to the second level untouched like this, that's bad news for a defense because he's a powerful runner. He's going to be tough for secondary guys to tackle him, as you could see here, right? I mean, this is just a lot of physicality running the football downhill. But it's not just a downhill running. They got guys who can run to the outside. Here we go again. Now they're using formations to their leverage. You have a tight end wing and a flanker here with a slot backside, right? So you can see they're trying to out-leverage the defense. They're in the middle of the field. And you got speedsters who can get the ball. They're going to run again, a sweep. Got to get a guard pulling. You're going to get linemen down blocking. You're going to look at these backs, try to block these guys one-on-one at the second level. And they have just executed very well. Look at these guys moving. Right, again, you get a nice hit right there. Look at the running back right here blocking at the second level. Look at this running back leading the way. And you get a speedster like this to the outside with this much room. This leads to big plays. I love the effort. Look at the running back running downhill, getting to that second level. Blocking things up for his back. I love it. Leads to these big plays. They execute very well running both inside and outside. Finally, again, I mentioned a big part of this game is going to be who makes the most pass plays, in my opinion. So you can see similar formation. Tight end wing, slot backside. Nice little nifty play right here. They're going to motion out this wing back, right? When they motion this guy out, another very good athlete that they have at the back spot. Again, second and long, but it reveals what they're in. Because the run is so effective, you're going to have to play man coverage against these guys, right? So they're going to be playing man one-on-one with the corner, the safety's one-on-one with the tight end. And he's playing off coverage right now. They're going to run just to go. And watch this young quarterback. Watch this guy get separation here. Couple steps, and look at this ball placement, Mars. I mean, that's beautiful. That's beautiful right there. Again, Valhalla has multiple guys who can beat you. But what's been so impressive to me is not just the talented guys that they have running the ball, catching the ball, it's the execution that they have blocking up front and by the backs and by the tight ends. To me, when you can do that, you know, your run game is going to produce 700 yards in 2 games. All right, Mars, I had a lot to say there. This is a really good matchup. 2 staples in C. Who wins and why?
Yeah, so this was really tough for me, mainly because both these teams have shown that they could win it all, right? They've had the defense that is aggressive, offense that both work for their schemes, and I feel like it's really tough to make a decision on who would be the winner here. And obviously with Valhalla being at home, it does give them that momentum. And I'm looking at Das Ferry and I go, well, you know, one of the trademarks that they always have would be the control the line of scrimmage and to slow the game down into their level. All right. And I feel like that's going to give Das Ferry an advantage in this case, mainly because Valhalla banks on playing defense fast, getting their offense back on the field, scoring quickly, and just constantly just pounding the rock and just getting their best athletes on the field. And Das Ferry is almost like the opposite in a way, right? Not saying that they don't score a lot because they do, but they like to play more slowly and control the line of scrimmage. And then once they get up, they run the clock down. And I feel like Das Ferry is going to try that same mantra. And even though their defense has struggled in some cases this year, they really can't force as many turnovers as they used to. I just have a feeling that Das Ferry is going to go into Valhalla and pull off a really tight game. And I think Das Ferry is going to win this game. And even though Valhalla I do believe that Valhalla is one of the top contenders in C right now, I just feel like they're going to be off on this game. And I think Das Ferry is going to win.
Again, 2 staples, 2 very strong offenses, both, you know, averaging over 34 points a game. They have been so efficient. Both fronts have really blocked well. And I really like the athletes. Now, the big question to me is Jackson Kearns, who has been a emerging superstar for Dobbs Ferry. Don't know his status. But I am going to go with Valhalla. They're at home, Mars. They're playing at a very high level on both sides of the ball. And Dobbs Ferry defensively is pretty strong. But we have seen some kinks in the armor at times on defense where they've given up big plays. And I think Valhalla takes advantage of that. I think you're going to see a lot of running, a lot of carries. But I think Valhalla is going to make a couple more big pass plays in this one. And they're going to win this game in a close one. I'm going Valhalla. All right. So that was Hudson Valley Football League and C&D, guys. If you haven't done so yet, hit that thumbs up and sub if you haven't. Also, guys, if you have any questions, throw it in the chat. If we're picking the games, you want to let us know your thoughts, throw what your ideas in the chat on who you think is going to win. We only ask that you keep your bias at the door, is what I'll say. We don't want those homers in chat. All right, Mars, let's keep it going. Now we got B. All right, so I got the schedule up for B, and let's start with the first one and let me make sure it's the first one that I have on my schedule. Yep. And that is a league matchup. We have Pelham 2-4 at Ardsley, who's 2-3. Pelham currently sitting at 13th in the Pioneer system. Ardsley sitting at 6th. To me, this is Pelham's do or die right here, right? To kind of, and again, it's going to change some of their Pioneer scores. They're going to get closer to the top these last 2 weeks because of who they've played. But they need wins. They need wins here, and they lost 25-8 versus Pearl River. Ardsley won 35-2 at Edgemont. It's really a big game for both teams. But Pelham has lost 4 straight, and they have lost by 14 or more in each of those losses, Mars. So it has been a struggle. Offensively, they've struggled to score points. Romano has been really good, as a receiver. He made some big plays these last couple weeks that have masked some of the issues scoring points. But they've had 6 turnovers the last 2 games, Mars. They have turned the ball over a lot these last few weeks. And over the 4-game winning streak has been a real struggle. And when you look at Ardsley, Mars, I know they're 0-3 at home, which is wild, that Ardsley, who is pretty damn good at home. But this is a team that's playing better. Offensively, they have really played better the last 2 weeks. It starts with the run game. Protecting the football is obviously key in this one. And defensively, they've always been a pretty consistent, strong force. They're number 5 in points allowed in B. I think Ardsley's going to win this game at home. They're playing a little bit more consistent. I know Pelham is they're going to play very desperate in this one, but I like the way Ardsley's been playing these last couple games. I'm going to go with Ardsley.
I'm also going to go with Ardsley. I feel like they have been competitive in all the games they've lost. I mean, I feel like they've always battled and grind for every game. And, even the big games against like Pleasantville and Bronxville, they were 1 score away.
Yes.
Right.
And Westlake.
Those games. And Westlake, 1 score away. And, they have been hit with the unlucky bug. I feel like everything that has bad that could have happened to them in all those different games. And at some point, the luck's got to go the other direction, right? And I feel like for Ardsley, being 0-3 at home this year is unheard of. So I feel like they're gonna have that game that they can say, hey, we finally can turn it around and have a home win. And I feel like it's going to be this week. And Pelham is going to play with a lot of desperation and a lot of fight and a lot of grit. I just think Ardsley, when everything hits well, they can be a very dominant team in B. It just depends on what day it is, the luck levels, and
stop turning the ball over.
Well, right? They got to all have rabbit's foots with them to cure them of this bad luck they have. But I'm going to go with Ardsley here.
Next up, we have a league matchup. Pearl River 5-1 at Edgemont, who is 0-6. Pearl River currently sitting 3rd in the Pioneer system. Edgemont is 15th. And Pearl River won 25-8 at Pelham. Edgemont lost 35-2 versus Ardsley. And to me, again, I'm going to go with Pearl River. They are 3-0 on the road. This has been a very strong road team. They're 5th in points scored, Mars. They've scored 20-plus points in 5 out of 6 games. It starts with the run game in Amundsen, who's had 3 touchdowns the last 2 weeks. But defensively, this is the number 3 defense in points allowed. They forced 4 turnovers over the last 2 weeks. And they've really made some big plays to get some victories over these last 2 games. And you're up against an Edgemont offense that is last in being points scored. So to me, haven't scored an offensive touchdown in 3 games. I think Pearl River's defense is going to be a little too much. They're going to run the ball very effectively. I'm going Pearl River.
Yeah, I'm also going to go with Pearl River. I feel like they're that other really dangerous team in B, and they had obviously a really good showing this year. I feel like defensively they've really been consistent. I mean, they've been able to force turnovers. They have been able to kind of slow down the big plays, and obviously it's going to be up to their offense to really be consistent. I feel like they have to be able to just their offensive line has to win up front, and I think they'll be able to do so. I'm going to go Pro River here.
Next up, we have a league matchup. Westlake, who's 5-0 at the Briarcliff Hamilton football program, who's 3-3. Westlake is currently sitting number 1 in the Pioneer system in B. Briarcliff is sitting at number 7. So, this is another very big matchup, important matchup. Westlake won 41-7 at Sleepy Hollow. Briarcliff won 33-0 versus Croton Harmon. And, I know we love to joke around with the Westlake crowd. We got to go back and forth with them. But to me, Westlake's just playing at a really high level. In the last 2 weeks, Mars they've outscored their opponents 81-7. Briarcliff has had a strong offense. They're 7th in points. But to me, they're going up against a defense that's number 2 in points allowed. They've allowed 7 points total the last 2 weeks. Zino had a pick 6 last week. This is a defense that really can get after you if you're not going north and south. And if you have to get into a passing game with them, can the offensive line hold up front? With the speed and power that this defensive front can hold, and this secondary that can really get after it. We know DiNapoli, who's been a stud for them offensively, Hud, Langeza, just too many weapons, I think, for Briarcliff. I'm going to go with Westlake to win. I think they win pretty decisively.
Yeah, I'm also going to go with Westlake, and obviously they've been playing at a very high level. The question is going to be about what I mentioned before about Ardsley having kind of the unluckiest run, and Westlake's been on a roll, and the question is going to be at what point are they going to be kind of challenged to a high level? The last 2 weeks they've been kind of skating by a little bit, and I think that they now are going to be getting challenged with Briarcliff, and the following week against Pleasantville, and now this is going to be what you get to see what Westlake's made of, right? Are they going to finish out the year on a high note, or are you going to see some kinks in the armor, right? That's going to be the big question. But I'm going to go Westlake here. I feel like they've been playing at a very high level, haven't really shown a lot of weaknesses so far, and I just feel like they've been on a roll. So I'm going to see that momentum really just continue.
Yeah, and now Bronxville, who's 5-0, it was supposed to go to Croton Harmon, who's 0-5. Croton Harmon, due to injuries, due to lack of experience, has forfeited the game. So Bronxville does go to 6-0. Croton Harmon will drop to 0-6. So I just wanted to make that statement here
because we're both wins on that one, or is that a?
Yeah, we did. It's a push. It's a push. Okay. So we don't pick that game, but we'll go to the next one, which is a league matchup. Nanuet 2-3 at Rhinebeck, who's 3-2. Another interesting one to me. Nanuet is 10th in the Pioneer system. Rhinebeck is currently sitting at 5th. Nanuet lost 33-7 versus Pleasantville. They have lost 2 straight. Rhinebeck did not have a game last week, but they have won 2 straight. And when I look at this game, Rhinebeck has been impressive, especially defensively. They're 4th in points allowed. They do a good job of forcing turnover. They have to obviously stop a feisty, scrappy running game where they're going to be a bit undersized. Can they match the physicality of Nanuet? This has been a strong defense offensively. Salvaderi is a big playmaker for them, and the quarterback Byron can hit big plays to guys like Van Rogen. But when I look at Nanuet, who I thought got embarrassed at home, again, playing a good Pleasantville team, but I thought it'd be much more competitive. And they gave up way too many big pass plays for a defense that, in my opinion, is pretty good. So to me, I think they're going to make life a little bit difficult for Rhinebeck. I know Rhinebeck is good. They play better at home. They're 2-0 at home. But I think you're going to see this Nanuet offense reestablish the run in this one with Duffy, with Moran, and then Flowers hit a couple big plays. I thought Peterson, their quarterback, he's been pretty consistent all year. I thought he missed some throws last week, and I think he's going to be a little bit better in this one. The physicality of Nanuet, I think, wins in the end. I think this could be close for a while, but Nanuet is going to pull away and win this game on the road.
I'm gonna go with Rhinebeck, and I feel like Rhinebeck at home, as their momentum has been going in the right direction. At home, they play a lot better. Their defense is 4 out of the 15 in B, and the question is going to be about can they match Nanuet's physicality? And I think you might have mentioned this already, but their size and can they compete with a more downhill running team? And I feel like their defense is going to be rallying. Right? I don't really. I think Rhinebeck's biggest concern is trying to stay ahead in a very like trying to a very I guess I would say a fast running game because it's going to be a lot of running the ball and the clock running down. So the question is going to be about can Rhinebeck get some points up there and maybe force Nanuet to have to climb back behind, right? And that's going to be the big question I'm going to see here. But I think Rhinebeck can do it, and I think they can at home. I'm going to go with Rhinebeck.
All right, next up we have Byram Hills, who's 4-2, at Pleasantville, who's 3-2. Byram Hills currently sitting at 8th in the Pioneer system. Pleasantville is sitting at 4th. And Byram Hills won 42-14 versus Irvington. They have won 2 straight. Pleasantville won 33-7 at Nanuet. They have won 3 straight. So 2 teams on a nice little streak here. And, you know, when you look at Byram Hills offensively, Mars, they have really exploded these last couple games. They've scored 93 points over the last 2 games. That has moved them to 3rd out of the B schools, out of 15 of them in points per game. Had 5 rushing touchdowns last week by Leff and Weiss combined. Can they consistently run the ball against a tough Pleasantville defensive front 7? That's going to be a big question to me. And can they take advantage if they're going to get these loaded boxes with a lot of linebackers trying to stunt? Can they take advantage against the man coverage with their quarterback in Baskin, who had 139 yards last week? That's going to be the big one for me offensively. When I look at Pleasantville, defensively they've been a strong unit. And they've been pretty strong outside of the Bronxville game pretty much for the rest of the games. I mean, they're 6th in points allowed. 2 weeks ago, they did give up some big pass plays, but they avoided that last week where they really tampered things down and made it very difficult for Nanuet. And they're really starting to come into their own. But the big thing, Mars, is offensively. I mean, the pass attack has awoken. 2 weeks ago, it was about the run game. Last week, it was about the pass attack. This team has scored 75 points the last 2 games. And they had 5 passing touchdowns over the last 2 games. So I thought quarterback Rizzi had some really nice moments throwing the football down the field. And you saw Reish and McPhee really establish themselves in the passing game, being pretty huge. And obviously with Sadao and Hudzinski running the ball, if they can avoid turnovers, this offense feels like it's turning the corner here. So that's a big development for Pleasantville. And against a Byram Hills defense that is 10th out of 15 in points, they've allowed 21 or more in 4 out of 6 games. I'm going to go with Pleasantville. They're home. They're playing real high level. I like the way Byram Hills offense has kind of been more balanced, running the football, throwing, making big plays in the passing game. But I think they're going to run up against a tough defense here. And this Pleasantville offense, if they can pass the ball with that efficiency that you saw last week, I think they win this game. I'm going Pleasantville, Mars. I know you're not picking, but give me the thoughts on it.
Yeah, I feel like this is obviously a big game for both these programs, mainly because Byram Hills is trying to keep themselves in that playoff contention, and Pleasantville is trying to keep their momentum in the right direction because they're being 4th, and they obviously had the toughest road to get to where they are, which is why the Pioneer system is giving them a higher ranking, even with a record being a little bit lesser than some of the other competitors. But this is their chance to kind of elevate themselves to the point where if they win this game, then against Westlake, they could essentially become the 2nd team if they beat Westlake.
The next 2 games. If they win the next 2 games.
Next 2 games. If they win the next 2 games, they could jump to be the 2nd team in the playoffs, which would be a big deal, especially seeing how they started the year and seeing where they are now. So I feel like this is a big moment for both programs. It's going to be up to really who steps up, right? I feel like it's going to be it has to be a full team effort between the veterans and the young guys. So all around, I feel like this is a big game for both these groups.
Last game for B, and that is Irvington 2-3 at Sleepy Hollow, who's 2-2. Irvington currently is sitting at 12th in the Pioneer system. Sleepy Hollow is currently sitting at 9th. And, both these teams coming off pretty tough losses. Irvington lost 42-14 at Byram Hills. Sleepy Hollow lost 41-7 versus Westlake. And again, when I look at Irvington, this is an offense that shows that they can move the ball. I mean, they're 6 out of 15 in points scored, but turnovers have been an absolute killer for them at pivotal moments. And defensively is where, to me, they've really struggled. They have had 3 games they've allowed 24-plus points. Now, when I look at Sleepy Hollow, it wasn't a great showing last week. They lost Richardson, who was a stud back for them for the season, which doesn't help. But I think they're going to make some bigger plays in this one. I think it's going to be easier to move the ball running the football and hitting some big pass plays with some of the speedsters that they have, whether it's Onway or Federici, and running the ball with Mahood. So, to me, defensively, didn't get enough from their offense last week. They're 8th out of 15 in points allowed, which is pretty solid defense. I think Sleepy Hollow at home slows things down a little bit. I know they're going up against a tough Irvington offense, but I think Sleepy Hollow's offense is going to control the game a little bit more. I'm going Sleepy Hollow.
This is a tough one. Right. I think Sleepy Hollow playing at home does elevate them, and they have the headless horseman right onto the
Yep.
field, and gets everyone gets them on Bleach Report and everything like that. And I think it's a great or Barstool Sports, sorry, not Bleach Report, Barstool Sports, and I think it's a great showing that they've had. And granted, they've struggled right when it comes from their offense, but Irvington offensively has been very impressive. The only concern I have about Irvington is their defense, right? If they can try to slow down Sleepy Hollow, then it can give their offense way more chances. And because of that reason, I think the defense will step up, and I'm going to go with Irvington. I know playing away is never going to be an easy thing, but the way their offense is playing is pretty at a very good level. And the issue that they have is that they will turn the ball over at times, but if they can limit the turnovers and give their offense more of a consistency, then they can score a lot of points. And I think that's going to give them that edge, like that if they just minimize mistakes, then I think they'll be all right. And I think it's going to be a close game, but I'm going to go with Irvington here.
All right, that was the last game for B, and now we're going to move now to A with another batch of really important games. And this one was close to being our game of the week in the A League. And we usually pick 3 games of the week just because of time purposes. And but this one didn't make the cut, but it was close. And that is the big league matchup of Brewster 5-1 at Somers, who is 6-0. And, Somers is currently sitting at number 1. Brewster is currently sitting at number 2. And a win for Somers here clinches the league. So this is a huge one. Now, if Brewster wins, it gives them an opportunity next week to clinch the league. So this is a huge playoff ramification game here. And Brewster won 20-0 versus Fox Lane. They have won 2 straight. Somers won 40-3 versus Harrison, which to me, it wasn't a surprise I picked Somers to win. It was a surprise on how dominant and decisive it was so early versus Harrison. And historically, in this rivalry, Somers is dominant. They're 14-3 versus Brewster Mars. They have won 7 straight. And the last time this matchup ended in a one-score game, Mars, was in 2016, where it was a 42-35 game. So it has been a one-sided affair for a long time. Just being honest. Again, I'm not trying to trash talk here. This is just reporting stats. But let me start with Brewster. And I got to give credit to Brewster. They have to be taken seriously. And offensively, that's it's not defensively, because I really like their defense for a while. Offensively, it's been the inconsistencies that have made me hesitant. And I got to give them credit. The last couple of weeks, they've been more consistent. This offensive line in the run game has been more dominant. They have established themselves more with guys like Trey Ficarro. He had a receiving touchdown last week, but running the football with him. Prohaska is a guy who got involved in the running game last week. He had a rushing touchdown. And quarterback Dillon, who's going to be so important against the Somers team, who's going to me, try to put the game in his hands. They're going to try to stop the run and force Brewster to beat them throwing the ball and protecting the football. And he had 2 touchdowns last week, throwing to guys like Schmidt, who's a tall receiver for them. They're going to have to make plays in the passing game because, running the ball against Somers, which Brewster has to do, right? That's a big part of their game. It's not like they're going to throw the ball 40 times. If they're throwing it that many times, they're going to lose. But they have to be able to hit on some big plays when you're getting man coverage versus Somers. It's a must. That's a huge key for me. Defensively, this is the number 1 defense in A in points allowed. They have 4 games this year, Mars, where they have not allowed an offensive touchdown. And so I am so interested to see how Brewster brackets Palazzolo. Again, you can't play man on him. Harrison tried playing man at times, and he killed them every time. Every time. So how does Brewster play this? Because about the rush attack with Iglesias and Kelly. You load the box, but then you have to put somebody on an island. How does Brewster play Palazzolo, whether he's in trips, in the slot, or whether he's a single receiver in condensed formation? It's going to be so important, but really love this defensive front 7 who can stop the run. How do they bracket Palazzolo is going to be a big question, Mars. And then when I look at Somers, I know I'm going long, Mars, because this is such a huge matchup. It's not a game of the week, but it's a huge matchup. Somers was dominant versus Harrison. This is the number 1 offense in points scored. They average over 38 points a game. This has been so good. They've scored 40 points in 4 straight games, and they're just playing at a high level, and it starts with their 3 musketeers, with Iglesias, Kelly, and Palazzolo, who have just been tremendous. And it surprised me on how dominant in the run game they were versus Harrison, which forced Harrison that we got to load the box. And now we have man coverage on Palazzolo, and they took advantage of that. So they've been sensational. They were up 21-0 with 12 minutes into the game last week. It's just crazy. But this defense is getting better for Somers. They're 6 out of 13 in points allowed now. They allowed 10 points the last 2 games combined. Guys like Monahan and Harris have been very active. I talked a lot here, Mars, because this is one of our most interesting matchups that I've seen this year. But I don't think Godzilla goes down. I'm going to go with Somers. They are at home. They're up against a very tough Brewster defense. But the 3 Musketeers that Godzilla has, and this defense really picking things up, they're just playing at a very high level. Somers has moved to my number 1 team in A. And it's not because I'm down on the other teams. It's because Somers is really starting to pick things up. I'm going to go with Somers.
Yeah, I'm also going to go with Somers, and I agree with you. It's like, Somers has always been a contender, and it just feels like this year they started out very slow, right? And we talked about that, and I mentioned it. Every game was like, by halftime, they then have to wake up and realize that we are a top-tier team, and we shouldn't be doing the things we're doing. And then they wake up and then they destroy a team, right? We saw that with Mayapack. We saw that with several teams. But then you start seeing them wake up and realize that if they show up the start of the game with the same fire, then they dominate teams. And you saw that with Harrison, right? Yeah. You see that with a lot of other teams in the second half of the season. And I feel like this will be a similar action that happens. I'm going to go with Somers. They're playing at home. They have a chance to clinch the league, which obviously is a big deal. I mean, they've clinched the league. It feels like we're how many years in a row at this point. And it feels like this is a big moment for a lot of these guys, especially when you started to see a little bit of kinks in the armor. They want to show that there isn't anything that is messed up here. And Brewster is a big deal as well. I mean, 5-1 is a really good season so far, and they want to try to get a chance to do that too, to secure a higher level spot. But I just feel like Somers has too much going on right now. They have too many guys that are hard to count for. Brewster's offense has been struggling, right? They're banking on their defense to keep games really low, and their offense can score enough just to get ahead. But Somers' defense is very good. I mean, they've showed some issues, but they've gotten better. Right? Yeah. Their offense is unmatched right now, and I feel like I don't really know if Brewster's defense can keep up with the speed that Somers has. And I feel like that because of that, Somers is going to win this game.
Next up, we have Mayapack 4-2 at John Jay Cross River, who's 1-5. Mayapack right now is tied for 3rd with Yorktown, but they lost to them, so they don't have the tiebreaker with them. John Jay's looking for their first league win, so they're trying to play spoiler. And last week, let's be honest, Mayapack got their ass kicked versus Yorktown. Probably surprised a lot of people. I thought Yorktown was going to respond well. I didn't think they'd go out up 28-0, but I thought they were going to respond and win. So Mayapack is going to come into this game with an edge. John Jay Cross River lost 29-13 versus Lakeland. They have lost 4 straight. And I'm going to go with Mayapack. Listen, John Jay Cross River defensively, they're last in A in points allowed. They've allowed, I think, 200-plus yards in back-to-back games, and that is right in Mayapack's wheelhouse. It runs with physicality. This offensive line is going to push people around. And unless John Jay Cross River changes, really starts bailing out to stop the run, brings a different intensity that I haven't seen these last few games. Really haven't seen since week 1 from this defense really coming after him. I think Mayapack is going to push them around and run for a lot of yards in this one and really keep the ball out of Machado's hands and Patrick Ryan's hands on John Jay Cross River. So, again, to me, I think this game is over kind of relatively quickly. And I'm not trying to talk. I think Mayapack is a little too big for John Jay right now, too physical. And after the beating they took last week, I think they're going to come with an edge in this one. And I'm going to go with Mayapack to win.
I'm going to go with Mayapack as well. And last week I picked Mayapack, and I did not expect the outcome that ended up happening. I mean, that was a 40 burger is not necessarily a good thing, and I don't think that's really it's going to be weighing quite a bit on Mayapack's players. And I feel like the offensive line for Mayapack is really going to step up this week, and I feel like they're going to play with an edge, like I said. And offensive line, defensive line, that has been Mayapack's best aspect, right?
Yeah.
They have been owning everyone up front, and I just feel like they're going to kind of put the game on their shoulders and just kind of control the line of scrimmage and really push John Jay around. And John Jay just has not been able to establish much of their identity, and we've been saying that all year long. And I agree with you. I just don't think their size can match Mayapack's. I'm going to go with Mayapack here.
Next up, league matchup, we have Eastchester, who's 3-3 at Clarkstown North, who is 2-4. Eastchester currently sitting at 3rd in league. Clarkstown North is tied for 5th. Now, an Eastchester win, I believe, gives them a playoff spot. So this is going to be a huge one. Clarkstown North would need to win out and a Clarkstown South loss. So they're not out of it either, but they need to win out here. And when I look at this game, Eastchester lost 14-0 versus Rye. They have lost 2 straight, but they have played some tough opponents. You got Harrison and Rye back-to-back, which is the 2 teams at the top of the conference. And Clarkstown North lost a close game, 33-25 at Clarkstown South. This is an interesting one because Eastchester's offense has really struggled. They have not scored an offensive touchdown now in 2 games. Again, tough defenses they played, Ryan Harrison, I get it. But penalties and turnovers have been absolute killer to them. What helps, though, their defense has been very good. They're 3rd in points allowed. They've only allowed 1 game of over 20 points. If they can prevent big plays from this Clarkstown North offense, which has been solid, is very strong as well, I think they win this game. I think this offense does get back on track of running the football against a Clarkstown North defense that has also struggled. They give up a lot of rush yards. That's, to me, in Eastchester's wheelhouse. I'm going to go with Eastchester to go on the road and win this game. I think it could be a very entertaining game for at least 2 or 3 quarters, but I think Eastchester pulls away here. I'm going Eastchester.
I'm not actually going to agree with you. I feel like Eastchester's defense has been very good. Their offense has definitely struggled, and I do agree with you that the fact that the last 2 weeks, it's kind of hard to judge them on that, mainly because they're playing against top level defenses, and now they might feel a little bit more breathing room, especially because Clarkstown North's defense is 12 out of 13 in points allowed, and maybe it might help them get some momentum back. And I feel like their defense is playing at a top tier, even though Clarkstown North's offense has scored quite a bit of points. I just think Eastchester is going to slow the game down and win up front, and their defense is going to give their offense a lot more opportunities. And I'm going to go with Eastchester here.
Next game up, we have Nyack, who's 1-5 at Clarkstown South, who's 3-3. This is a league matchup, and Clarkstown South needs to get this win here because next week is a non-league game. And if they get a win, I think they get into the playoffs. They're currently sitting at the number 4 spot. But Nyack, they came back. They won, I think it was a 36-8 versus Yonkers Forest. Their offense really woke up. Clarkstown South won their big rivalry game, 33-25 versus Clarkstown North, like I just mentioned. But when I look at Nyack, the grand picture, the offense has struggled all season. Last week, they really woke up. Sean Claremont had over 200 yards rushing and a touchdown. And quarterback Williams made some big plays for them. I think he had 4 total touchdowns last week. And defensively, Nyack has been pretty solid. But when I look at Clarkstown South, the offense finally exploded, Mars. We talked about it last week. I thought they were going to. They really did. Van Eden had over 150 yards and a touchdown. Tito had a rushing touchdown. Oliveri was making plays for them. And this offensive line was moving people. And that's a big, big thing for Clarkstown South. They needed to get this offense going. They did last week. Defensively, it wasn't their best game last week. But this has been a strong defensive unit. They forced a couple turnovers. I'm going to go with Clarkstown South. I think, again, if they can bottle up the big plays from guys like Claremont and Williams, guys like Sparing, Arzoni, Colton, and Rosario making plays for them defensively, I think Clarkstown South, and you're going to start to see them move in the right direction offensively. If they prevent those big plays, they're going to win this game, and I think they do. I'm going Clarkstown South.
Nyack has been very competitive with a lot of teams this year, and they've been really grinding, but they just have not been able to find their ground, and they've made some mistakes. They've turned the ball over. They've been unable to stop the big play. And Clarkstown South is fighting for something that is big, getting into the playoffs. And I feel like they finally, like you said before, they're starting to finally see that full picture of their offense. And their defense has been solid, but they need to get more turnovers to get their offense more time on the field. And I feel like they're going to get that this week. Playing at home, Clarkstown South, I think, is going to win. They're going to secure a playoff spot. And it's obviously going to be a big win for them for this year.
All right. We keep going, guys. Next up, a matchup. Lakeland 2-4 at Fox Lane. That's 2-3. Lakeland currently sitting at 6th. Fox Lane currently sitting at 5th. I have to quickly do the math in my head, but I don't think Lakeland has a shot in the playoffs. I think they've been eliminated too. But Fox Lane still has a shot here. And when I look at last week, Lakeland lost 29-13 at John Jay Cross River. Fox Lane lost 20-0 at Brewster. From my understanding, I think Fox Lane... I'm sorry, what'd you say?
Didn't Lakeland win?
I'm sorry, yeah, they won. Did I say they lost? They won 29-13 at John Jay Cross River. Excuse me. My apologies. But if Fox Lane wins out and Yorktown loses the last game of the season, which is against Brewster, I think Fox Lane has a way to get in as the last seed in the playoffs. And again, Lakeland offensively, they were able to run the ball last week with guys like Policastro and Fabrosi, who had 3 touchdowns combined rushing last week. Defensively, they've been a solid group with Oliva and Ferrante making plays, but at times they do give up a lot of rush yards. And when I look at Fox Lane, I don't know the status of their quarterback in Cernick, who I didn't see play in the second quarter beyond against Brewster, which when you have all these wide receivers, that's a big loss for them because they had to really change their offense. So I don't know his status, but I do know that they have their running back in Connors. And see, maybe they can get some of these receivers on some jet sweeps to run the ball against a defense that at times has given up some big rush plays. Defensively, they've had difficulty stopping the run as well. But I think this Fox Lane offense that really struggled last week gets back on track. They keep their season alive. Fox Lane is going to win at home.
And you said that Fox Lane can make the playoffs, but then who would miss out?
Yorktown.
Yorktown would be bounced out if Fox Lane wins out.
They have the tiebreaker, Fox Lane over Yorktown, from my understanding. And Yorktown would have to lose to Brewster next week.
Interesting. Well, I mean, part of me says one of the biggest things that Fox Lane's fighting for is...
And maybe my math is wrong. Right? I'm just saying I think that's the path for Fox Lane.
That would be pretty crazy to see if that was able to happen. I mean, that just changes everything. But Fox Lane's playing for something bigger, right? They're playing for a playoff spot. They're playing to stay alive, and I agree with you. I feel like their offense needs to definitely play a lot better if they're going to end up winning this game. And John Jay, Lakeland had a big win against John Jay, which they needed. And even if they're not playing for a playoff spot, it's almost like a game of pride at this point. And obviously Fox Lane is, they got to hope that their defense can really shore up the rush defense and really slow down Lakeland from really scoring, right? Because Lakeland's scoring offense has not been amazing, but they have proven to be able to run the ball, and that seems to be Fox Lane's biggest weakness. And I think I'm going to go with Fox Lane to win this game, mainly because I know that they're playing at home. They're playing for something bigger, and I feel like this seems like a pretty even matchup between the two. I just think that Fox Lane being a home team is going to give them that edge. I'm going to go with Fox Lane.
We did receive a question, and from Football Cute's brother. Question unrelated to the games with Section 1, and we'll get back to the game of the week, guys, don't worry. Which Section 1 football team do you think has the best social media pages? Now, Mars, I have kind of been on a little bit of a binge lately, probably not good for my mental health, but I've been on social media a little binge, and I followed a bunch of these Barstool high school accounts in Section 1. And, there have been some impressive work done by some people. Some people do need to work on their Photoshop skills. So guys, you got to get into some of those lessons there. But I will say this, I'll give a couple shout outs. I thought, RCK Barstool, Ketchum's Barstool has been pretty good. Carmel Barstool has been pretty damn good. But I've been following, and if there are other Barstools, let me know, because I will follow, because I do find it entertaining. They do some nice memes going back and forth with each other on the different school accounts. But those are the two that stand out to me over these last couple weeks that I've been pretty impressed with. But there's others, and there's probably others that I haven't seen. So definitely, guys, connect with us. Out of all good fun. Obviously, inappropriate stuff we're not going to really be a part of. But, for the fun stuff, those are a couple that stand out to me. Mars, any quick thoughts you have, or did that kind of answer?
It's impressive how some of their memes that they can develop. I would love for them to expand upon it and almost turn this show into almost like a first take and maybe take some sides here, because sometimes we do get some of that. And
they only like memeing when we're wrong. They don't like to meme. Yeah. They don't want to meme when we're right, though. But thank you for the question. I appreciate it.
Yeah, good question.
But let's get to the game of the week on a more serious note. And it has to be Rye 6-0 at Yorktown, who's 4-2. Now, this is a non-league game. But similar to last week when we had Somers versus Harrison, this is a big barometer game on where kind of these elite teams are. And currently, Rye is tied for first in their league in League B. Yorktown is tied for third with Mayapack. And again, non-league, so this one's not going to directly affect their league standings. But a very, to me, an important game because it's going to see where these two teams are at. And historically, Rye is 7-3 versus Yorktown. They have a 3-game win streak, but they last played in 2022 where Rye won a very close game 13-12. And let's start with Rye, Mars. They won 14-0 at Eastchester. Offensively, it's a very strong offense. They're number 2 out of 13 in points scored. They average over 32 points a game. Now, they started the season scoring 30-plus points in 4 straight games, but the last 2 games, Mars, they have scored 21 and they've scored 14. Now, they played some strong defenses. You played Clarkstown South and you played Eastchester, both strong defenses in the league, and you've seen this offense kind of reel back a little bit. And to me, a big of that is finishing drives. They've run into some of that issues of finishing drives, and that's what they have to get back on track on this time. Now, did not see their running back Luliano play last week. The rumors is he's playing this week based on, I heard from Lohud, so that's obviously huge coming back. But obviously, we talk about quarterback Boo Miller. Didn't have a lot of passing yards last week, 48 pass yards at a touchdown, also had an INT. His legs made some big plays last week, 94 yards rushing and a touchdown. They have a cast of targets. We know about Kessler, who's a big body target. Fenton, who's a fast target. Hess, who's a fast target. Schumacher is another tall target. So they got a couple big body guys against a Yorktown secondary who I thought was so vastly improved last week, but they're not as big, right? They're a smaller, feistier group, and Rye has these big targets. And so to me, that's a big factor in this one, and also Rye's ability to run the ball. Having Luliano is going to be huge, and Ramachandran is another running back who's made some big plays. He had over 100 yards last week. Can this offensive line dictate things with their size and running the football? We know about the stud at the quarterback spot and these weapons, which that's going to be part of the film that I talk about is the pass attack. But can this running game establish itself and keep Yorktown's offense on the sideline? Defensively, while the offense has kind of taken a step back on scoring a lot of points, this defense has stepped up. They're now the number 2 defense in points allowed. They've had 2 straight shutouts. This group is very strong. They want to create a lot of pressures. They want to get you behind the chains, and then that's when they're forcing those turnovers because they can get after the quarterback. And so that's going to be so important for them is to limit the big pass plays, get you behind the chains, and then use that front 7, use some of their blitzes and stunts to get after the quarterback. They had 2 INTs last week. So going to be so interesting, Mars. Thoughts on Rye before we get to Yorktown?
I mean, Rye has been, I know it's crazy to say, but Rye's been kind of playing under the radar. I feel like everyone's been talking about Somers, and obviously, rightfully so. But I feel like Rye has been that complete team that has just been almost like overlooked for some reason. I feel like they've been playing probably at the highest tier at this point. And yes, even the last 2 weeks, their offense has struggled. I mean, and I keep saying this every week, but it looks like Boo Miller is passing at a Madden level, right? He's playing at a level of, incredible numbers. And last week was the first time he saw a dip in that, but his rush offense was even improved. So it's just like you just have so many weapons that it's really difficult to slow down or stop. But defensively, they've really stepped up and really just kind of owned the teams. And 2 straight shutouts is obviously a pretty big deal. So, I mean, so far, they've been really impressive. I'm actually surprised to not really hear as much about Rye being the top team. Well, everyone's always kind of guaranteeing Somers is, but Rye's been overlooked a little bit.
Well, again, Somers, because they've been playing at such a high level recently, I think that's kind of taken the spotlight off of Rye a little. But let's move now to Yorktown. And they were extremely impressive last week at coming off of an upset loss. They won 42-7 at Mayapack, like I mentioned. And offensively, Mars is the number 3 offense in points scored. They have scored 40-plus points in 2 out of the last 3 games. And I thought they had a sensational game last week. I mean, from multiple facets. First off, they have a great quarterback. We know about Gonzalez. He had 3 passing touchdowns and a rushing touchdown last week. He has 50 career passing touchdowns. He is tremendous football player, such an important aspect of their offense. But I thought the game was very well coached. They schemed up Mayapack. They were going to face man coverage. They really called the right plays when Mayapack was trying to bring stunts. And these skill guys really took, again, they were playing man, they were playing press man at times, and these receivers made big plays and won those 50-50 battles. And so it's going to be so, we know that they want to throw the football. They're going to throw probably a lot in this game as well. Can they run the ball is going to be a big question. I do think, again, if Rye is going to give you some light looks, as in, you're going to see some of these outside linebackers try to jam your slot receivers. Do they try to run underneath that by using their numbers, their leverage? I could see that absolutely. They're going to, again, try to do that. But I really think this offensive line and knowing where Rye is going to bring their stunts is going to be so important. They did a really good job last week. They got to do it again here. And there's even going to be times that they're going to see delayed blitzes. Or you're going to see Rye jam a receiver, and then he comes late. And so they have to be aware, the offensive linemen, the running backs, have to be aware, and they have to make them pay. You're going to get man coverage versus Rye when they're bringing those stunts. And are those linebackers that are coming, are they going to match up with your running back who might slip out, or your H-back that slips out of the backfield? There might be some opportunities to dump it off to those guys. So really interested to see offensively. Defensively also, they stepped up last week. This is the number 4 defense in points allowed. They forced 2 turnovers. They're not huge, right? They got some size. They got some smaller guys, but they are feisty. And you saw that feistiness return last week. And that's what they're going to have to do against a high-powered offense. And Rye offensively has a lot of big-bodied guys. Kesner, Schumacher, guys that are 6'3", 6'5". I mean, how are these smaller guys going to handle that? They got to get pressure and keep Boo Miller in the pocket. That's going to be so important because they like to get Boo Miller outside the pocket because he can run the ball, the play-action game. Can they keep him in the pocket? Because you don't want to be in a jump ball fest and a throwing fest, I think, with Rye. I think you want to throw the ball and get them behind the chains so you can force some pressure. Mars, thoughts on Yorktown?
I feel like Yorktown has, obviously they had that really close game against Fox Lane and they lost and they got upsetted. But it feels like they almost woke up, right? And they've had a battle against Somers early on in the season. They were winning all these games, and then they sort of overlooked Fox Lane, and then kind of said, you know what? We're not letting it go to chance. And that's what the Mayapack game turned out to be, where they just kind of dominated right from the start in Mayapack, which was, I didn't expect that. A lot of teams, I don't think Loha didn't expect it either. I feel like this is a big moment for them because now they're playing against another top-tier team, similar to what we just talked about with Somers earlier, and it's really going to be their chance to show what they can do. Even though this game loss does not matter for anything, it's a pride game. It's a game to kind of show everybody that Yorktown is a team to look out for in A. And I feel like this is going to be a really interesting matchup between a really gritty team in Yorktown and a team that has been really just been all around performing at a high level in Rye. So, it's going to be really interesting here.
Yeah, and I want to show these 2 quarterbacks and some of the pass game that they have and some of the value that they bring to their team. We talked about, again, the run game is going to be a big factor for Rye. We know Yorktown likes to pass and probably schematically give some running opportunities. But let's talk about some of these quarterbacks and give them, some of the showcase that I think they deserve. And, you can see up on the screen, right? Good. And let me start with the road team in Rye. And quarterback Boo Miller, coming into the game, there was a lot of talk, that it's hard to replace AJ. But Carson Boo Miller has done a really, really good job. And he has a lot of weapons. Part of the thing that I really love about the Rye pass attack is because they can run the ball and because they have good size to them, the play action game is damn effective. And I love when they do some of this rollout game, right? So you're going to see they got a tight end right with a flanker, running back in the backfield. So you have to respect the run game here. It's not full spread, but they're going to do play action. They're going to roll out the quarterback. And I love when they do that because it does put a lot of pressure on your defense because it gets Boo Miller out on the edge, what gives him the option. He can throw the ball or he can run the ball. And you can see the routes here, right? And as this play gets going, look at the fake, getting to the outside. And I love the option here. You can run it or you can go for it. And the defense actually does a pretty good job defending this, right? You can see everyone got matched up. The safety, because Kesner is going across the field here, which they love to throw it to him on these, he stays low, which again leaves a one-on-one opportunity for the wide receiver. And this is, I believe, Schumacher here, big, tall receiver. And look at him. He already knows where he wants to go. He knows there's one-on-one coverage. Look at him set his feet and watch the ball placement here. And this is what's been so impressive. Usually you get these, younger quarterbacks, the timing, the ball placement, those are things that grow over time. And Mars mentioned the Madden numbers, and it's because he makes throws like this. Again, reads the one-on-one and look where the ball's placed, Mars. I mean, you really can't defend that much better. Again, you can have maybe a little bit too much separation, but when you got receivers with such size to them like Schumacher, you throw it in the right spot, it's hard to defend. Leads to that touchdown. And it looks easy. But I love the play action, puts so much pressure on your secondary, and then these big targets can make plays for you. Then we get to kind of the X factor here, which is his legs. And again, this is now a big, you got trips right, solo receiver left, and just kind of give an idea, because I'm a defensive guy, I love, defense. But look how wide those three receivers are. And when you usually get those receivers that wide, I mean, they're on the left hash, those three receivers are, the third receiver's on the hash, it usually means that they're trying to target in-breaking routes, right? So you're going to see here, they're going to run kind of like this slant, a post, and a wheel on the three receiver side, and on the single receiver side, an in-breaking route. And you can see all those receivers line up wide, and these are the little details that offensive coordinators like to do, and defenses need to pick up on, that when they're that wide, they're either trying to run the ball, or they're trying to target some of these in-breaking routes. And you're going to see that is exactly what they're trying to do. But the secondary actually does a pretty good job. They're kind of running a quarter, half coverage here with these guys with the arrows. So this corner, he's got a quarter of the field. This safety, he's got a quarter of the field. And then the opposite safety has half the field. And the secondary does a pretty good job. You can see Miller takes a quick look to his left, and then he's really looking right because he wants to target these in-breaking routes. And I think they're really trying to target this inside receiver. But this safety does a good job on the opposite field, seeing that and trying to attack it, taking away that window. Now that the window's taken away, Carson has his X factor, which is his legs. So now he tries to scramble. And look at him. D-lineman almost gets there for his safety, but because of his athleticism, he's hard to keep in the box. And now it's, again, 3rd and long. And look at this. Makes the guy miss. Spin there. And this is so backbreaking for a defense, Mars, when a quarterback can do this, where you play great coverage. You can almost get a sack for a safety, and then it leads to this 30-plus yard run. Backbreaking. And now we get to Yorktown. And again, Gonzalez has been tremendous. He's had a great career for Yorktown, and I thought last week he was decisive and he threw with really good accuracy. And here's an example of it. First, let's just talk about a nice play call here. Again, look at Mayapack right here. You see these two linebackers are very close to each other, and these two D tackles are a bit wide. And it kind of shows you a couple things. Number one, there's a chance that at least one of these guys are blitzing, right? Look how close they are. They're both standing in the A-gaps. There's a good chance that they're blitzing. Secondly, look at the secondary. All of them are up on the line of scrimmage except for one safety. That leads to me that there probably is some man coverage here, right? Yorktown sees that, and they're motioning. And it also then definitely reveals it to them. Because that's Galante motioning behind the quarterback. You could see number 21 is running with him. So to me, for a quarterback, that's a strong indicator here. We're getting man coverage. These guys are all on the line of scrimmage. They look like they're man-free, press man-free, because number 21 is running with the motion across the field. But another kudos is to this line. You got to be able to protect when you want to run these kind of patterns, that they want to do these man beaters. And this is the route. You got a post or a slant, if you want to call it a skinny post, and a wheel. And then the running back who motion is going to bubble out as a safety valve. And you can see both linebackers are coming. So again, executing here. Watch the offensive line. Look at the running back. They take away that initial thing. Now Caden sees that there's some pressure in his face. He's got to throw the ball right now. But who is he throwing to? Everyone looks covered. But watch the ball placement. When you have a quarterback who can throw with really good ball placement, you can beat great coverage. And he's throwing it to the wheel. Look at here, Mars. Boom. Right over the defender's shoulder, towards the sideline, outside the numbers. That is a beautiful throw. Leads to a massive gain. The last play I want to show, and again, talking about the accuracy, now look at the secondary. They're playing off. Right? So you're probably not getting that, blitz is coming, press man. You got two backs again, and this is the route combination. You're going to have this outside guy coming across the field. You're going to get a slant on this far receiver, and then on the near receiver towards the sideline, you're going to get a go route. Right? Now, this corner's playing off coverage, so he's actually in pretty good position, and you could see when the corner opening up his hips to you, not towards the receiver, to me, that kind of tells you they're playing kind of a cover 3 look, right? But he's going to attack that guy anyway, even though he's playing off. And so it might not be, hey, this is the route he should go, but he trusts in his receiver and he trusts in his accuracy. And watch the ball placement here. First, great protection up front. Look at him, a clean window to throw it. I mean, he's covered right now. But watch the ball placement. And look at the receiver. Bam. I mean, that is pretty. And as a defensive coach, that gives me heartburn on the other side. But that was a pretty ball. And I tell you what, he played a tremendous game, like a leader's supposed to when you're trying to turn around a game. And plays like that is what's going to give Yorktown a chance against a good Rye team. All right, Mars, that was our nice little film session right there. Who do you got winning and why?
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely one of the toughest games I had to pick all year so far. And mainly it's because you have Rye that's been all around and playing at a top tier level, right? If you're not going to say Somers, it's Rye as the team that is the best in A right now. And guys like Boo Miller have been phenomenal. I've been hyping them up all season long. And, he's been hitting these numbers that have been tremendous, right? And I feel like it's not just him. There's a collection of guys that have been really playing at a high level and is allowing this offense to be unstoppable in a lot of ways. And defensively, they've been recently in the last 2 games, they've been dominant, right? The 2 straight shutouts have been very strong, and they just been playing very tough. And Yorktown seems like that team that is extremely gritty. Like, they may not be the biggest team out there, but they've been competing with the biggest teams because they are just so aggressive, and schematically they've been kind of out-coaching a lot of teams. And you saw that last week with how well that they were playing offensively against Maypac's defense. And when you look at this game and the importance that Yorktown has to really show what they're capable of doing, they lost a close game against Somers at the end, and Somers pulled it off. And now you have Rye, that is another top-tier team. The question is going to be, what Yorktown team is going to show up? Is it going to be the team that overlooks a squad like they did against Fox Lane, or is it going to be the team that battled Somers at the end? And I think we're going to get the team that battled against Somers, and I'm going to go with Yorktown to pull off the upset and win at home. Even though this is not going to count for anything, I think this is going to be a game that Yorktown it has been awoken after their Fox Lane loss, and I think that they're going to pull off an upset. And I don't think Rye is going to overlook Yorktown, but part of me thinks that they're going to. I feel like you've noticed in the last few weeks when Rye plays a very good defense or a solid defense, their offense does struggle. Now, the defense stepped up big time and shut teams out. But I think Yorktown's offense is better, right, than Eastchester. I think Yorktown the offense is more capable. And I think when you play a really good defense that Yorktown has, and now you play more of a competent offense that can really score points at will at times, I think this game is going to be really interesting. And I'm going to go with Yorktown because I just feel like they have the home field advantage. They're playing for something bigger. Rye might look past this game a little bit, and I think Yorktown's going to pull off in the end.
This is a very dangerous game for Rye. And a similar sentiment that I have for you. Next game is Harrison for the league title, right? So this game that does not have league implications could be an easy one to overlook. You mentioned what you said. Yorktown had a really nice bounce back game. Now, defensively, they did at times get the ball run on them. But because they scored at such a high clip, making some big-time throws and catches by their receivers, they were able to get ahead of Mayapack, which forced them to change their offense and not run the ball as much, which was in Yorktown's favor. In this game, I do think Rye can establish the run game more consistently, which will put a tough spot for Yorktown. But I will say this. I am going to go with Rye. And I think this is how the game is going to set up. I think Yorktown is going to lead in this game, and at some points lead going into the fourth quarter. But I think Rye, rallies itself and wins towards the end of this game. It's going to be a close one. This could be a very dangerous game for Rye because if Yorktown plays like they did versus Mayapack, this game could be an upset. But I do think Rye executes, and defensively, they have really stepped up the last couple weeks, which I think will create some pressure on Gonzalez. And I think they make just enough plays to win this game in a tight one. I'm going with Rye. Boy, going to be a fun one. All right, guys, let's get to the last leg of the race, and that is in Double A. And let's start with the first game. John Jay East Fishkill 1-5 at North Rockland, who's 4-2. John Jay is 7th in the league. North Rockland is tied for first with Scarsdale, but they have the tiebreaker win versus Scarsdale. And John Jay won 28-16 versus New Rochelle. And North Rockland won 14-6 versus Scarsdale. And for North Rockland, a win and Scarsdale loss means that they win the league title. So this could be a big moment for North Rockland. And when I look at North Rockland, it was very impressive last week. I know offensively they were up against a very tough defense, so they weren't, they weren't as consistent, but they made some big plays running the ball, and we knew they had that speed. Javon Lawrence had a couple big rushing touchdowns, and I do think you're going to see Jaquan Johnson get really back into his groove running the football this week. And Perini, who had a couple INTs last week, has been pretty good protecting the ball. I think he steps up this week. I'm going to go with North Rockland. What was really impressive to me is even though offensively they've struggled outside of a couple plays, it's the defense that stepped up in the second half and was really strong. And now you're seeing that North Rockland can win offensively and they can win defensively. And I know John Jay's played better over these last couple games, but defensively they're 11th out of 15 in points allowed. They have given up a lot of big plays before, and I think this North Rockland offense can hit on those big plays. I'm going to go with North Rockland.
Yeah, I'm also going to go with North Rockland. I feel like they had a really big win last week against Scarsdale, and now they're playing for a really big deal to try to secure the number one spot and win the league. And John Jay has just struggled, right? They have not been able to kind of identify what makes their team kind of run off of. Their offense has been a little bit better than their defense, but North Rockland has been very impressive, right? Their skill players can make big time plays if they get into open space, and I really just don't see John Jay Fishkill's defense really slowing this down. I think North Rockland's going to win at home.
All right, next AA league matchup, we have New Rochelle 0-6 at Mamaroneck, who's 4-2. New Rochelle is 8th. Mamaroneck is tied for 3rd with Carmel and Suffern, which they've beaten Carmel, but they have lost to Suffern. And so when you look at New Rochelle, they lost 28-16 at John Jay East Fishkill. Mamaroneck lost 21-7 versus Suffern. And I'll say this, listen, we know New Rochelle offensively has been very consistent. I saw number 21 make some nice plays for them last week. Fernand is another playmaker for them, but they're last in points scored in AA. And going up against Mamaroneck, who's 6th in points allowed out of 15 schools, if they can prevent the big play, I think this defense can really slow down New Rochelle's offense. The question I have is for Mamaroneck's offense. Quarterback Jacobson got hurt last week. We don't know his status. He is so important for this offense. They need to figure out other playmakers. Leibowitz had over 100 yards rushing, but because when he left the game, Mars, this offense could not finish. And they need to find out whether Jacobson's playing or not. I think they make enough plays offensively in this one. I'm going to go with Mamaroneck.
I'm also going with Mamaroneck as well. They had a tough loss against Suffern. I feel like they're going to wake up a little bit. Their defense has been impressive, but their offense has struggled. I think they're going to have a game where they can kind of set themselves in the right direction. I just think New Rochelle doesn't really have as many playmakers to slow down Mamaroneck when they start running the ball more effectively. And I feel like Mamaroneck's going to win this game at home.
Next up, AA matchup, we have Carmel 3-2 at Scarsdale, who's 4-1. Carmel is tied for 3rd with Mamaroneck, who they lost to, and Suffern, who they beat. So another really important league game. And Scarsdale is tied for 1st with North Rockland, but they lost, obviously, with the tiebreaker. So when I look at this, Carmel won 41-28 versus Arlington last week. Scarsdale lost 14-6 at North Rockland. And I'll say that Carmel's offense, they lost W for the year, Werlew, who is one of the best, in my opinion, the best back in Section 1. And I knew that they would have to move to a more passing offense, and that's what they did last week. I mean, McGorry had 291 yards and 4 touchdowns. Guys like White, Connolly, Galbraith, all big playmakers that they made big plays in the passing game last week. How about Kemba Casau? He had over 100 yards rushing and a touchdown. He filled that running game void pretty damn well. But the problem I have is defensively. I mean, they still gave up a lot of big plays. I know they forced some turnovers, but they're still 13 out of 15 in points allowed. Gave up 28 points. Struggled to stop the run game at times, especially out on the edge. And here comes Scarsdale, who offensively, Mars, they ran the ball very well. They controlled the game last week, but missed opportunities were a big factor. They had a big fumble. They had a field goal blocked, and drives stalled once they got beyond the 50. I think they're going to run the ball much better. Finish drives much better this time around. Again, they lost Brennan, who's a big-time two-way player for them. But I think you're going to see Gilligan and Krupkin make some plays, and quarterback Ebner Boris be a little bit more consistent. Defensively, Mars, they were still really strong outside of 2 big plays. giving up a long touchdown run and a big pass play that set up the second touchdown. If they could play strong defense, the secondary will be tested. I think Scarsdale bounces back and wins this game. I know Carmel, they'll put up some points. It won't be a low-scoring game, but I think Scarsdale is going to shorten this game like they did last week, but finish drives better. I'm going Scarsdale.
Yeah, I'm also going to agree with you. I think Scarsdale is going to win this game, mainly because the fact that they can now use their offensive schemes to kind of slow the game down and really just control really the line of scrimmage. I mean, playing against Scarsdale, you have to have a disciplined football. Carmel's defense has struggled all year, and obviously their offense has been is still impressive. It's number one scoring offense in Double-A. But you're playing now against the top defense in Double-A. Okay, Scarsdale's the number one defense, and they've proven that they can really shut people down. But like you said before, the secondary is going to be tested, right? The question is going to be, can Scarsdale limit the big plays from Carmel and then just control the time of possession? And I feel like they will, especially at home. It's a long ride from Carmel. I'm going to go Scarsdale here.
Next up, we have Yonkers Brave 2-4 at White Plains, who's 0-5. Both teams eliminated from the playoffs. Yonkers Brave lost 31-0 at Ketchum. White Plains lost 40-33 at East Ramapo. And this was a tough one for me because Yonkers Brave offensively really can run the ball, right? You have Sissy, who has one of the best running backs in Section 1 this year, Mars, and they've been really efficient running the ball. Problem is they've turned the ball over a lot. They had a lot of turnovers last week. Defensively also been pretty solid. They do get after you and force turnovers, but they've given up 65 points the last 2 weeks. So you've seen this, Yonkers Brave team struggle with turnovers and giving up big plays. And I look at White Plains, Mars. They lost by 1 touchdown in back-to-back games. Offensively, they've been pretty consistent all year. They're 4th in points scored in Double-A. They have 3 games scoring over 28, but they have the worst defense. They give up a lot of rush yards. So what is going to break here? I'm going to go with White Plains. I know defensively they have really struggled. They've given up a lot of rush yards, and now against a Yonkers Brave who runs the ball well, that doesn't spell well. But I think they're going to have a couple turnovers in this one, and this White Plains offense is going to be a high-scoring game. I think White Plains just makes enough plays. They're going to win for the upset at home. I'm going White Plains.
I don't know, the other direction, I'm going to go Yonkers Brave. I feel like because of the fact that their rush offense is going to be so good, and especially against a White Plains defense that has struggled, I just think they're going to have really more control of the game, right? I'm going to go with Yonkers Brave. I feel like they're going to improve themselves to 3-4. Obviously they had a tough game against Ketchum last week, but I feel like that might wake them up a little bit.
Next up, we have double league matchup. Suffern 3-3 at Arlington, who's 2-4. Suffern is tied for 3rd in the league. I've mentioned that multiple times. Arlington is currently 6th. And last week, Suffern won 21-7 at Mamaroneck. Arlington lost 41-28 at Carmel.
Carmel.
And Suffern, they won 2 straight, Mars. They're 2-0 on the road. Really impressive victory last week at Mamaroneck. And listen, offensively, we know that they're talented. It starts with Jeff Joseph, had over 270 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. Him and the offensive line really dictated things in the second half at Mamaroneck. And their quarterback, Palumbo, we've seen make plays, and guys like Tarrant and Mitchell. Can that offensive line continue at this week? I like their chances because they're up against, an Arlington defense that have gave up over 400 yards last week. So can they run the football? I do. But what has impressed me about Suffern is defensively, Mars. They have really stepped up. In the 2-game winning streak, they've given up 28 total points combined. Before that, they were giving up 30-plus points. Right? So you've seen this defense step up big time, make big-time stops. And against an Arlington offense that has run the ball a lot better. But if this Suffern defense can make those pivotal stops, I think this offense can make some big plays. I'm going with Suffern on the road.
Yeah, I'm actually going to agree with you here. I feel like Suffern's defense has really been impressive the last few weeks, and their offense has always been top tier, in my opinion. Jeff Joseph has been really impressive all year long. Had some tough games against some really good opponents, but I feel like him playing at a high level and this defense really starting to come into their own. I feel like Arlington's not going to have an easy time here. I feel like the fact that their offense is 13 out of 15 in points scored, especially against a defense that has been getting better, I just don't know how they're going to be able to score a lot of points here. And I feel like Suffern's going to kind of control the line of scrimmage. I'm going to go with Suffern.
Next up, we have East Ramapo, who's 2-3, at Yonkers Force, who's 2-3. Loser is eliminated from the playoffs. Winner, I think, still has a chance, but the water is very muddy because you have to get into that second spot. So definitely want to recheck the numbers there if the winner is still alive. But let's start with East Ramapo, who was they won 40-33 versus White Plains. Yonkers Force lost 36-8 at Nyack. And this one's a tough one for me because Yonkers Force offensively, without their quarterback in Fields, which I don't know his status, if he's not playing, it changes the offense completely. We know that they have some playmakers, but they have really struggled in recent weeks. They've now dropped to 14th out of 15 schools in points scored per game. Defensively, they've been a pretty solid unit. They're number 7. And when I look at East Ramapo, they ran the ball very well last week. 131 yards by Osborne and 3 touchdowns. Brown had over 100 yards rushing. If they can establish that run and protect the football, I've said it multiple times, I like the way if this defense can get after Yonkers Force offense. We have Anthony Mack, who has 6 sacks on the season. He's been very disruptive. Eli Pierre is another one who's been very active. Again, without having an injury report, don't know the status, but I am going to go with East Ramapo. I think they go on the road and win this. If Fields is not playing, it definitely changes the dynamic of this offense that I think East Ramapo can take advantage of. If he does play, it makes things a lot more interesting. Might even pick the other way, so I don't know, but I am going to go with East Ramapo on the information I have.
I'm going to go with Yonkers Force. I feel like their defense has been, they're 7 out of 15 in points allowed. Yeah. I feel like they are definitely going to be stepping it up this week. They're playing at home. I know that East Ramapo has been really, they had a lot of points scored in their win against White Plains. But that was also against the probably, if not the lowest in points allowed. I'm sorry, in highest in points allowed if they're 15 out of 15. Yep. So it means that their offense was playing against a defense that was struggling. But now they're playing against a defense that is roughly in the middle of the pack. So the question is going to be, can their offense continue that momentum? But at the same time, Force is 14 out of 15 points allowed, points forced. And the question of Fields is a big question mark. But I'm going to go with Force. I think he's going to be able to play this game. If not, then I still think they're going to be able to win. I think it's going to be riding on their defense, and their defense is going to keep them keep the score close. I think they're going to have enough to win this game.
All right, let's get to our game of the week, the last game. And that is Ketchum, who's 4-1 at Ossining, who's 4-1. Big league matchup here. Ketchum currently is sitting at 2nd in the league. Ossining is sitting at 1st in League B. And historically, Ketchum is 3-2 versus Ossining. Last played in 2021, where Ossining won. And let's start with Ketchum, Mars. They won 31-0 versus Brave. Last time this team had 4 wins in a season, which is what they have right now, was in 2019, where they had 5 wins. So have an opportunity here to match their 2019 win total. It's the best start to their season since 2013. Starting the year 4-1. Offensively, they're playing good football on both sides. And offensively, they're number 2 in AA in points scored now. It starts with the run game. It is led by Dylan Fay, who had 2 rushing touchdowns. But you've seen other guys like Biber, Turner. They can run the ball inside and run the ball outside. And it's a lot of credit to this offensive line and backs. I mentioned it earlier with Valhalla. They have been executing and moving people off the ball very well. They've been executing on their blocks really well, which allows them to be a diverse running offense. So this offensive line deserves a lot of credit. And you know about their quarterback in Fitzsimmons, who, again, has to be smart with the ball because they're up against a very tough defensive front and a team that forces a lot of interceptions and turnovers. So you have to be really smart with the football this week. Got to protect the ball is going to be a key for this offense. Again, they like to run the ball inside and out, but getting the ball out of your hand quickly in the passing game and then take, if you have max protection, some of those shots down the field is going to be a thing to me that's big. Defensively, Mars, they're also playing really well. They have back-to-back shutouts. This defense forced 4 turnovers last week. Raheem Edible has been a monster. He has been super disruptive and has been a spark plug for this defense. So, to me, it starts with stopping the run with them. Thoughts on Ketchum, Mars?
Yeah, I feel like their team all around has been playing very well. Their points scored has been really high level. Defensively, they've been improving throughout the year, and I think this is a great showing by Ketchum overall. And obviously, they just been clicking on all cylinders.
Yeah. Yeah, and then we go to Ossining, who they won 6-0 at Mount Vernon in double overtime, and then win here, Mars, is a division title. So really important game at home. Offensively, we know it's been mixed. Right? It starts with running the football. They've had multiple backs. Ramirez has been a real key factor the last couple of weeks. He had 129 yards last week in the game-winning touchdown. You've seen guys like Ibarra be important in the run game. Their quarterback in McCormick running the ball and out of play action. But it really starts with running the ball. They want to run the ball, control the clock, shorten the game. That's going to be their formula, and it's going to be in this week too. But what they really ride on is defensively. This is the number 2 defense in points allowed. You've seen guys like Cassione and Moore leading the way. This defense has done a really good job of stopping the run inside and outside the tackles. and then they put you behind the chains, and this defense forces turnovers. They force a lot of fumbles. Pine had an INT last week. Frith and McCormick, you've seen make plays. This is a defense that really gets after the football, and has forced a boatload of turnovers this week and have been really stout, stopping the run for most of the season. And that's where it starts. You want to catch him in second and third and long defensively, because then this defensive front, guys like Moore can get after the quarterback, Mars. And Moore, let me just say this, is a menace to society, the offensive society. That guy is a absolute beast. He was a Frank's finest for a reason, and he is having a tremendous season. Thoughts on Ossining, Mars, and then we'll show some film to wrap it up.
Very impressive so far this season, obviously, by Ossining, and their defense has really been their backbone. Their offense can struggle, right? But the defense has really always kept them in these games, and they've just scored enough points to win, right? And I feel like it's really going to be depending on their defense and how they play in this game to really set the stage here.
Yeah, and to wrap it up for the film, I wanted to show Ketchum's offense and a little bit of the Ossining defensive front in this one. And so if you could see my screen, I'm going to start with Ketchum, who's the road team. And I've been really impressed with their ability to run the ball, both inside and outside the tackles. And their execution has been really strong. They can outflank you with their formations, which you'll show in the next play. But this is just really executing on your blocks. And this offensive line has been physical and moving bodies. And you can see they're lined up here. They got two receivers to the right. And you have, again, a guard tackle tight end to the left with this H-back. You're just going to get some power football. You're going to get the guard pulling in, you get this H-back pulling in, you get some down blocks. And you want to see the movement at the point of attack so you can get a nice kick-out block and cause some avenues for your running back. Just power football. And look at the guys up front, Mars. They do a really good job of down blocking. You can get that movement there. Nice kick-out block, head to the inside here on the trap. And that H-back now comes inside. And watch how this avenue opens up. Look at the lane here. Boom. Nice shot there by the H-back. Opens things up for the running back who's been hitting the hole really hard. Multiple guys. Look at him shoot out of a cannon right there. And you've seen this all year. The running game has been really strong because they're executing up front, getting movement, and the backs are hitting the hole extremely hard. But it's not just the inside game. It's the outside game. And you can see they'll try to out-leverage you with their formations. They got a tight end flanker to the left. H-back is also to the left, right behind the tight end. And they're going to jet this guy and give him the ball. Right, again, you just want to get bodies out there. You're going to get a crack block by the wide receiver. Small guy, try to get a crack block on the linebacker. And again, they've done a really good job of executing. Look at, again, two guys out on the edge guy to make sure he's sealed. You see the running back getting out to the second level. Running back using his speed. And again, I know this wide receiver's got hit pretty hard here. Look at him cracking down on the linebacker. That's the effort you want to see. Crack on the linebacker, get up to that second level, and now using your speed here gets another big chunk play. They can make plays running the ball inside and running ball to the outside. But then I look at Ossining, right? And they've been really strong. And again, you'll see at times they'll only have one guy on the defensive line with his hand in the dirt, multiple guys standing up because they want to use their speed here. But I really like the way that they fill their gaps and rally to the ball. This is an inside run. You're going to see some down blocks here. They're going to try to trap Moore, who's on the outside. And this running back's going to get the ball, and he's going to try to bend it to that trap. Watch these linebackers. Look at him filling the gaps right here. He doesn't wait. He doesn't hesitate. He doesn't allow the lineman to get up to him. He stands in that A-gap. Look at this backside linebacker filling his gap. Watch Moore. He's really going to crash down hard on this kick-out block. And the running back, he's trying to bend it. It initially feels like it's there. But look at these guys rally. Look at the rally there by the backers. Look at Moore coming down the line. And these guys finish up that tackle. So it's like, okay, running inside's not that easy. Let's try to run outside. And you're going to see the menace to offensive society is lined up at the defensive tackle spot in Moore. There he's highlighted right here. Makes a lot of sense. Let's run outside of him, right? We don't want to run inside here. But he does such a good job of disengaging blocks and rallying to the ball. You're going to see him make a play right here. Right? You're going to see down blocks. They want to run a sweep to the outside of him. So let's wash him down. But he has really good awareness. He sees the guard pulling, so he knows he's got to cross face with this lineman. And look at him use his hands. So important when you read that lineman pulling, you want to try to fight to get to the outside. Look at him use his hands here, disengage. Look at this linebacker shooting the gap right here. So Moore does a really good job disengaging, get to the outside, forcing the running back inside, and now this linebacker can clean it up. Boom. And there's the rally. Again, Ossining has been really good defensively because they rally to the ball. They do a good job of slowing down the run game, and they have a menace at the defensive line spot in Moore. All right, Mars, who do you got winning and why?
I mean, this is definitely one of the toughest games, and I mentioned this before with a lot of other ones, but I feel like this is a tough one because both these teams are have some good matchups between each other. I feel like Ostening's defense has been very impressive all year long, and they are really the cogs of that team, right? The offense can score enough points to win, but the defense has been top notch. They force turnovers. They really are aggressive. Really speeding through the lines and causing some mayhem in the backfield. And their whole goal should be to try to create some pressure from the defensive line and try to force Ketchum to be in those third and long scenarios. Because Ketchum, on the other hand, has had a really good showing, especially in the run game. And I feel like if they are forced to go more into a passing sets, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. But Fitzsimons has been really good, right? He has been really smart with the ball. Oh, yes, Fitzsimmons has been really smart with the ball. He hasn't made a lot of bad bad moves or bad decisions.
It's been a long show,
and I feel like and I feel like he's been playing very well. But Ketchum's defense has also been very impressive. So I think overall this is a big game for both of these squads. They're both competing for the top spot in that League B. I'm going to go with Ketchum. I feel like Fitzsimmons is really impressive this year, but their defense for Ketchum is a third in points allowed.
Yeah.
And I feel like because of the fact that Ostening's offense has struggled at times, I feel like they're going to struggle here against Ketchum, and their offense has been top level, right? And I feel like because of that, getting more opportunities, they're going to have a real chance to score a lot of points, and I'm going to go with Ketchum here. The momentum has been on their side. I just feel like their offense is really, really clicking right now.
Ketchum has been really hot. Offensively, defensively, they've played really good complementary football and run the ball very well. But they have to go on the road, and this is going to Ossining, which is the number 2 defense, and they held a very high-powered Mount Vernon offense to 0 points at home. Mount Vernon was home, and they go to double overtime. Now, offensively, I agree with you. At times, it could be a little rough. I think they do have established a run game a little bit, shorten the game, don't give as many possessions to Ketchum, and this defense makes enough plays, forces a couple turnovers. I think Ossining will win this. Will win this at home, but it's going to be an interesting one. All right, everyone, that was our show. Thank you guys so much. The poll was actually pretty close. I think Mars close. I think it was 60-40. But thank you guys, as always, for tuning in. We really do appreciate your guys' support. If you haven't done so yet, hit that thumbs up and sub. Also, consider joining our Patreon. You can join for free for some of our announcements. But if you join as a paid member, you'll get some additional coverage that we've done all year. And it really does benefit our cause. So really do appreciate it, as always. And if you missed anything, guys, this will be posted to you. You guys can always rewind, go back. I know you guys want to get clips and meme us, so you can go back on our YouTube channel and do that. And with that, we will sign off, guys. Appreciate you, and you'll see you all very soon.